Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to this class of uh, the word religion. It's a survey on world religion, and we are continuing our discussion about what is religion, what's the nature and the essence of a religion, any religion. I mean, any good religion would have these elements, and we've been discussing these. So we know when we see a religion, there is a pseudo religion, seems like a religion, but it is not religion, like an ideology, but there is a religion, and then there's a good religion and bad religion. But we are talking about the normal, good, and major religion of the world. So there are some elements on this particular lesson that we are covering since last class. We say the religion is theorized, or theorized. And any good, proper, or organized, institutionalized religion with a history and popularity, they would have some theories, some organized theories, which again is another word is theorized. And when a religion has God as a theorized, and if it doesn't answer just a theory, and religion and theology is always, especially when you're dealing with Judaism or Islam or Christianity, these all have God, just one God, who is a supreme God. And it has all these religions commonly focuses on the God Yahweh, the Almighty One and Ultimate One, and then the absolute power. So dealing with these we call theology. So this is basically has to do with those religion that worships God or gods. Okay, we said that dogma is a more doctrine that is traditionalized, and usually I refer dogma to those relative teachings, not the absolute truth, but rather relative teachings, which becomes more of absolute and non-touchable. So, and when those doctrines become relative doctrines become absolute doctrine, and I would call it a dogma. Dogma happens with a long history of any certain religion. It happens with the Catholic Church. It also happens with the Protestant Church. It doesn't matter. And something like a dress code, for example, becomes very absolute. And you have to wear a certain dress when you come to a sanctuary, to a church, to the temple, and you cannot come into that facility, that sanctuary, if you are not appropriated to that dress code. And then not only in a sanctuary, that then they would apply this dress code to the daily living, and a girl should wear certain things because of the religion. And yeah, we have the Islamic religion that has a covering for the woman, and it should be on the color black and certain things. So some of these are the examples, as in all the religion. So that's kind of dogma that we taught about, discussed. And then teachings. Every religion that is a good, major, organized religion has a set of teachings, the lessons. And these teachings are the main core of the certain religion. And another word would be doctrine, but doctrine is more a little higher level than teachings. Teachings are according to the leader, or the beginner of that particular religion. And the doctrine is an organized way of these teachings. So teachings can be fragmented, but the doctrine is organized. When it is all organized, it becomes a theology or theories. So that's how we determine if certain religion is rather developed or less developed. Any even the shamanistic belief system or folk religions, they would have these teachings. There's no one who is preaching or teaching, but so-called the tradition of that particular religion has certain teachings within it. So teachings are there. Then instructions. Instructions are more of how to do certain things, how to do the rituals, how to live with the taboo and jinx and all these things that you try to avoid. You try to do certain things. These are very popular in folk religion. So folk religion is much based on the instructions than teachings. There are many things that you do to be, to bring the good luck or blessing from the spirits, and there are certain things that you do not do uh, to not to get the spirits angry, whether it's ancestor spirit or animistic spirits in the trees and the stones and the things around you in the nature. Still, there are certain instructions, and these are taught to the next generation in a very, natural way. What I mean is, it's embedded into daily lives. So as you just live together within a community, the next generation, younger generation would learn. It's automatic because these folk religions, case of folk religion, the culture and the folk religion is very interwoven. You cannot separate them. So in that way, these instructions just uh, are being transferred to the next generation within the culture. But today, the organized religion, for example, like for Protestant church, these instructions are taught in the classrooms, and as sometimes it's called the disciple training or Bible study, and even the sermons. It's a form of instruction, and it gives us certain instructions of what to do and what not to do. So, hold on a second. Excuse me for this. And there's a certain order within the system. So that means it's organized. Even the folk religion, there is a simplest form of order and organization. But any religion that evolves or develops, I would not use the word evolve, but rather use develop. development is within the human nature. The word evolve, it has some different connotations, so I will rather not use the word evolve, rather we'll use the word develop. So people try to develop, make it better, make it work more efficient, make it more organized. That's human nature is within us, and the people begin to set the orders, give certain levels and the system, and then the line of command, and who has the authority to make a certain decisions, and so on. So it always has to do with the power, but people sometimes hide their intentions, and the motives, hidden motives are there. But order is formed so they can arrange the power, and also the responsibilities, and any good organization, whether it's a religion or school or any other system, social system, they ought to have certain responsibilities shared or distributed, and the job descriptions. And these things are also implemented to any religion. So religion would have these elements, and we'll continue. And in a theology and any theory or doctrine of any religion, the Buddhism, Islam, whatever, you pick the religion, and you have most of these fundamental topics, because religion should cover these things. And if they don't cover these elements, then it would be more of a philosophy or ideology or a system of ethics rather than a religion. Even though philosophy and ideology is a belief system, just as much as a religion is, they do not deal with something like a life beyond, or the topic of salvation. Philosophy never deals with it. Okay, here are some of those religious topics. Even the philosophy deals with this topic of good and evil. They don't necessarily, the philosophy don't necessarily deals this theme of good and evil in respect to the cause and effect. Compared to the philosophy, the religion always deals with this topic of good and evil in relation to the cause and effect. So good causes certain consequences, and the evil causes certain consequences. So religion deals with the good and evil, and also deals with what the consequences are, and try to explain the human reality with these good and evil. Most of a religion does. It's not just a Christianity that does that. So when religion deals with this good and evil, it has a cause and effect. Great. Let me give you an example of Christianity. In the Bible, there's the first incident of good and evil is recorded in Genesis chapter 2. After God creating man and woman out of the dirt, and then they are placed in the place called Eden, which is a beautiful paradise. There's nothing to worry about. Food is available, provided, and you don't need a shelter because the weather I mean, the temperature and the humidity is perfectly controlled by God, and it's a lovely place. And there's no killing or blood or anything of that nature. So they're put in there, and there's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and then there is a tree of life. So these are the two significant trees that are planted in the Garden of Eden. And one day, there's a serpent, the snake, uh, in a form of a beautiful creature, comes to the Eve and uh, tempt her to eat the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So she takes it, and then there's something called sin. And then she gives that to the husband, Adam. So Eve gives the fruit to Adam, and Adam decides to take it and eat it. So all these things involves the personal and full, aware and calculated, rationalized decision of each individuals who are very capable of making own decisions, and thus are responsible for their own decisions. And that incident caused them to be either good or evil. Without choices, making choices, there is no good, no evil. Because the good and evil in the biblical term has to do with their inner intention, the utmost hidden desire and the motivation. That's either the motivation can be good or that motivation can be evil. Good and evil to himself or herself, because you have to go against your own conscience to be evil, and you have to go along with your own conscience to be good. And also, this good and evil is against God, because it is God who said you should not eat of this fruit, because once you eat it, you know, you taste, and you begin to decline, to die. So God is basically saying, as you eat it, you are going to have a difficult relationship with me. So that's death. I mean, biblical term of death is not just cutting, I mean, stopping of your breathing or brain function, but it means in the Bible, it means death means you are being separated from God, or you turned your back on God. You're not looking at God anymore. You're not facing God. That's termed death and sin. Sin and a cause of death. So slowly you are departing, getting away from God. So that process of death begins. That's what the actual Bible verse says. As you eat it, the process of death will begin. So it does. And so Bible explains the good and evil in its own terms. The good and evil in the Buddhism is much different than biblical good and evil. So each religion defines the good and evil in their own terms, and we call that their worldview. So religion basically it presents a worldview on these important ultimate matters of human existence and the reality. So that's how each religion tried to explain its reality its understanding of human existence. Thus, good and evil is a major topic in the theology of any religion. Then there is a righteousness. The question is, what is the right thing to do? Or what is being right for human being? And basically, just there's a conscience, a human conscience that's built in. You're born with. You don't have to learn. It's like a innate nature for the animals, but for human beings, it's not just the instinct, but it is more of spiritual dimension, spiritual instinct, which is called conscience. So even nobody telling you, it is bad thing to steal from someone, or lie to someone, or kill someone. That's you don't need to be taught. And these are like a universal. You go to anywhere in the world, into any kind of different culture, it is not right thing. It is not righteous thing to steal, lie, or kill. So we know by nature what the righteousness is. But in addition to that, each religion tries to define its own righteousness. For example, in the Bible, the righteousness means being right with God, the Creator, the Initiator, the Almighty. And God is the most right, perfect right person. And I don't mean a person, human being, but person as having the personality. So God is a person who is perfect and perfectly right. So we call that holiness. Holiness. So God is holy. When we say God is holy, it means that He is without sin, He is without wrong, He is without fault, and He is the righteousness. When you are right with that, the perfect righteousness, then you are righteous. So human being cannot be righteous because they first turned away from God. Not only they turned away from God, they begin to do the bad things. For example, in the Bible, once they eat the fruit and they go hide. Not only they go hide, they begin to blame each other. Adam says, because the woman that you gave me, that because of her, that I had to eat this. And then Eve says, it's not my fault. It is this serpent, the snake who came and tempted me and suggests to eat this, and he is at the fault. So these things happen to begin. So they become unrighteous. So righteousness is very key concept in any religion. And the thing is, each religion defines this righteousness in a very different way, as much as it defines the good and evil in very different way. So we know this righteousness is one key concept. Contrast to righteousness, so there's a sin and iniquities. Iniquities means also the sin, being wrong. Ethically, not only just morally, this righteousness and iniquity in the Bible is spiritually wrong. But most religion would take it as morally wrong, righteous and sin. But in the Bible, sin, 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 moral offense, because sin is a spiritual term, not a moral or ethical term. So it is different. But my point is, whether they define sin in this way or that way, each religion would have to deal with the sin. If it does not deal with the sin, then we'll come to the philosophy or ideology. Because most ideology does not deal with the sin, but it would deal with injustice. So injustice would be another term for the sin, for ideology. But injustice is not something of personal, but it's more of social in many ideology. And even if it's a personal, injustice would mean, it's caused by the system, the culture, and the surroundings. So the reality is the cause of injustice in most of Western ideology. So the sin is avoided topic in ideology or philosophy. So that's the difference. But religion has to deal with this sin and inequality because as the main issue. Then the blessings. Every religion that we search discuss that. Even if some religion that do not deal with the sin or righteousness or good and evil, usually the folk religion would not deal with these three topics in depth or intensity with certain intensity. They would avoid, or they would not have any theology about it because it doesn't need. The most folk religion focuses on this topic of blessing, because most man-made religion or the non, I would say Satan's are behind it usually, because that's it's purpose of Satan to make a human being less attractive to God. So that's a Christian explanation. You may not agree with it, but that's how we Christians understand. So even from being neutral position, human beings are by nature very self-centered. We are not made that way, but we decide to become selfish, according to the Bible. Anyway, you agree. I mean, socialist. Even if you're socialist or Islam or Buddhist, Buddhist has pretty much the same theology in this aspect to Christian faith belief. They say, Buddha said, people are selfish, self-centered. They don't care for others. And so thus we require mercy, and thus you require to be self-sacrificial, and retain your desire, your greed. So Buddha taught people are greedy. That the nirvana is to get away from that utmost desire to serve yourself. Same thing in the Bible. These teachings, the Buddha's teaching and the biblical teaching are very exactly same. The difference is how to get over these things and how to come out of it. And Buddha teaches. I mean, he doesn't really instructs to and forces to teach this, but the conclusion of it is saying it is you who are going to be, you know, disciplining yourself, training yourself, and meditating on yourself, and then empty everything out of you, and at the end, when you are successful, you'll reach a nirvana, is a complete accomplishment, or the understanding or enlightenment, or of some sort. So that's how Buddha viewed it. But Bible says you will never be able to do it yourself, because in you is a sin and the unrighteousness and that evil desire, and then selfishness and the greed. That's inside you, and you cannot get these things out of yourself. Thus, you need the help of the Holy Spirit, and that's the biblical teaching. But in spite of all these teachings, good teachings, most folk religion and even Buddhism and Christianity, that there is a key term, blessings, and the way they view the blessings, that it would be the the main theology of that particular religion. Because many Christians today believe that God is the blesser, and He blesses. He wants to bless His people. That's true, but what is a blessing? That's the issue. But many Christians believe the blessings are like a wealth, fame, and the power, and good living, and the good education. These things are just same as shamanism, animism, and other folk religion. That's the same thing in the Buddhism as well. But Buddhism is a little different. If you go deep into the Buddhism, the understanding of blessing is more closer to the understanding of blessing in the Bible. Because, Buddha reached at least at that level, though he did not finally come into the answer of that ultimate salvation. He didn't teach the salvation. He just taught nirvana, and he never used the term salvation on that matter. But anyway, Buddha reached pretty much the same understanding about the blessing as much as the Bible teaches the blessing. But most folk religion and just popular religion, they teach the blessing that's something that's good in human terms, that comes from beyond your ability or beyond your power or beyond your gain. So it is given to you free of charge usually, but sometimes you need to pay certain cost to get the blessings. For example, in shamanism, in Korean shamanism, you have this head of a pig, and then in front of that pig, you have that head, and people intentionally make it like a smiling face, and to this fat pig has a mouth, and then you have to put the $50 bill on its mouth to please the spirits behind that thing, and then they are blessed. So you have to pay certain amount, but the shamanist blessing is once you entertain it, then you pay $50, and you may expect $500 to $5,000 in return. So that's a kind of bargain. So they are willing to give that much money, because it's coming back at tenfold and hundredfold back, and you don't have to be good ethically or morally. I mean, it doesn't. I mean, shamanism doesn't demand you to be morally sound, but you try to just entertain the spirit with the money and the food. Eventually, this food and money goes to the shaman, and then he or she just consumes, and they use that money for himself or herself. But even though they do that, because these shamans are shaman, they are medium between these spirits and the human being who's coming to pray and ask for the blessing. For them, I mean, it is worth, because they need a medium, because they cannot directly communicate with these gods or spirits who are ready to bless these people. So the key to the blessing is entertaining your ancestor spirit, or just animal spirits, or the plant spirits, or these mini gods, and then they'll provide you the health, wealth, and the well-being. So that's basically what their understanding of blessing is. But biblical understanding of blessing, as I understand it, I mean, I used to also understood the blessing as something good coming out of heaven, given from God. So I'll be pleased. But the biblical blessing is this: God being with you. Period. That's a blessing, and there's no other blessings than that. And then God said, all these things. I mean, the food and shelter and these things that most Gentiles who desire as a blessing. These things just follow. You can follow, you cannot. You can be hungry but still blessed, because God is with you. That's the key thing in biblical blessing. And the second thing is being who you are, 100%, fully. That's the blessing. So if you're, say, if you're A, then you're going to be fully A. And if you're B, you're going to be fully B. So God had intended you to be a certain person with a certain ability, having certain responsibility. And if you are doing that responsibility, mandate, whatever you call it, and then you're becoming that character that God had built you, that is the blessing that we are talking about in the Bible. So it's totally different than the blessing in other religions, or some wrong interpretation within the Christian church. So okay, these are some of the other ultimate topics that religion deals with. The destiny, the ultimate destiny. I mean, what is at the end? That is always the question for the people. Because physically dying, we know, most people know that physically dying is not the end of you. Even though there are some people still believe, wants to believe, because if there's any existence beyond, they are not prepared, they are not ready for it, so they just try to ignore, and they just wants to deny the existence of the afterlife, after this life. But there's another life that continuing, because your spirit would not disappear, it would not die. And most religion knows that, and it acknowledges the life after this one. Whether it's a Buddhism, whether it's a Hinduism, whether it's a Islam, Judaism, Christianity, even the folk religions, most of folk religions. Folk religion, for example, the Native American Indians. The most religions they believe in the life beyond. There is something called destiny. We know by nature, because we are spiritual beings, we are aware of something that will happen after this life, after physical death. And because of that, because it's unknown, we fear. We have that fear. I mean, it's a human nature that took fear for something that is unknown. But the thing is, what if there is a so-called judgment? And what if there's a good place and bad place to be after the death? And if that is decided by what I have done in this life, so most religion, including the shamanism and animism and the folk religions, they would have this kind of cause and effect relationship between this life and the next life. And the destiny matters because something may happen, have that hunch, that kind of sense that something will happen. And that's going to be decided by what I'm doing right now at this life. So even though people does not speak out or can verbalize in a certain systematic way, there is that feeling of knowing that might gonna be the case. So that's why the religion is there, and people sometimes make their own religion or come to the religion because they want to be prepared for that final destiny. Sometimes it's called eternity, sometimes it's called heaven, or sometimes it's called hell. Whatever the next life is, we want to be prepared. So the destiny and eternity, that it goes together. So heaven and hell is there. And then paradise and purgatory. Paradise is something between this life and the heaven. So that's the good place to be after this physical life is over on earth. So when everything is over on earth, we believe the Christian, Judaism, Islam, and I don't know, I'm not certain about the Islam, but at least the Judaism and Christianity, they do have the term paradise, which is kind of in between state or place between the earth and heaven. Then purgatory, on the other hand, sometimes purgatory is used as a term, including paradise and what was that? There are two different hell, Gehenna and what's the other one? Gehenna. So there are two terms in the Old Testament that refers to the bad place after that, and the purgatory either refers to that bad place or the general state of being before the final judgment. So these are like the other topics, and usually it has to do with what happens after life. Now, doctrinal topics. So those are also doctrinal topics that we just have covered. But these doctrinal topics are usually applied to Judaism, Islam, and the Catholic Church, and the Protestant Christianity. So, the doctrine, the major doctrines in any religion with God or gods has these elements in it. The act of God to the human being or reality, and then there's a good act of God and a bad act of God, and then there's the act of man toward God, an act of man toward other human beings. So these are the major topics of these doctrines. So any theology, good doctrine, once you discuss this ultimate matters, ultimate topics like a good and evil, destiny, sin, and blessings, then it comes down to this relationship between God and man. Or three. Either it's a Unitarian God, just one God, or many gods, or spirits. Gods and spirits are pretty similar. I mean, in many religions, it's used interchangeably, meaning it just means basically the same thing. But some religions is differentiated. It's different thing. And then you can add in some religion angels are also a key figure in this religious stuff, discussion or theology or doctrine. And even though it does not say angels in also other religions, there are angel-like beings. It's not spirit, it's not God, but it's how to say? Yeah, it serves. These angels serve God or gods. They are the messengers or the servants of God or gods. They do what God tells them to do. So those are the angelic beings or celestial beings. And first we'll begin by discussing the acts of God. So on the topic of acts of God, These are some of the terms and the concepts within a religion. You may not have it, you may have it. This religion may have a very intense discussion on one of these topics, while some other religion just ignore the same topic and have a minimal discussion. It's different. That's world religions. A variety of religions deals with a variety of topics and subjects. But each religion may deal with these topics. First, incarnation. The concept of incarnation is very popular among all the religions. Most good, the major religions have this concept of incarnation. Incarnation means these gods, or spirits, or even angels appearing or becoming flesh and bones. They become human beings. For example, I told you about the Korean myth of how the Korea as a nation started. In that story, that ancient story narrative, there it says there is a God, and then God has a son, and this son comes down to earth, and then becomes a human being. Then the bear and tiger, there are two powerful worship animals, right? As enemies, and this one of those, it sustains 100 days in a cave, eating just garlic and this herbal, popular herbal plant. And then it becomes a girl. So that's another form of incarnation. So incarnation works in both ways. God become human being, or the animals become human being. And most religious narratives does have this concept of incarnation, or sort of transformation in another sense. Transformation. So usually we do not use incarnation for the animal becoming a human being. So transformation is more appropriate word for these things, fish or animals becoming a human being. Some believe it's true, it actually happened. Some believe it cannot happen, so it becomes a myth. Myth is when we say myth, it means ancient story about ancient things, or story about religious stuff, but not so much believable. So we know myth is a made-up story. So when we decide it's a made-up story, we call it a myth. And in those myths, animals become a human being. That's transformation. Then there's a resurrection. Resurrection is also a popular term, but it has to be distinguished with a resuscitation. Resuscitation means dead person coming back to life. But resuscitation has its limits, because that person who came back will eventually die. Resurrection, it means the one who is dead become a living again and live eternally. So that's resurrection. So in that sense, all the Christians, according to the Bible, who believe in Jesus Christ, are going to experience that resurrection. They will have an everlasting life. They will die once, but they will live again. So having this life and then life beyond. Or that's the eternal life. But in Bible, it teaches also eternal death. Eternal death means you are existing without God forever in hell. The worst state that you can ever imagine, which is you live in fear, you live in agony, you live in despair, you live in the utmost depression, you live in the worst anger, not only within yourself, but outside. You have to suffer from unbearable heat and unbearable pain, like putting salt on the skinless flesh. You know, that unbearable pain continues, it doesn't go away. And then unbearable thirst. See, that's it comes from outside and within. And it continues and continues and it never ends. See, I mean, imagine this. Imagine this. That's the hell. It's not the place, it's a state of being, the existence. And it is the reality. It's not imagination, it's a reality. That's the hell. On the contrast, heaven is the opposite of the hell. It's the eternal existence. Both are eternal existence, but one is resurrected, one is condemned. So resurrection and the incarnation and the transformation are the acts of God. You cannot do it yourself. Thus, it comes from the God Almighty or God beyond your ability, or gods and spirits that have extra power than a human being, extra ability than human being. So that's usually when we say the acts of God, it means something that human cannot do. If it's something that humans are able to do, then you don't need a God. So acts of God is always, or I should say most of the time, it is something that God does beyond our ability or capability, or even understanding. The salvation, any good religion deals with the doctrine of salvation, meaning you are destined to die. And every human being that we know of in history, they died. And there's no way that you can avoid it so far. So, but we know there's something beyond this death. And because it's unavoidable, this death, physical death, you have to find a reason, some rational. And that's the ultimate question. Why does people have to die? Why we cannot avoid it? And there are many people who try to beat that impossible, odd of being dead. I don't know Chinese pronunciation, but Qin, King Jin in Jin Dynasty in China, he tried everything possible to live forever, but he wasn't able to. So the salvation, saving yourself, toward that eternity is the key discussion in the doctrine. And it is, of course, the act of God, because you cannot save yourself. Human beings know that you cannot save yourself. Redemption has to do with the topic of sin. Because a sin, it brings certain punishment, certain consequences. And how do you avoid these consequences? Even if it's not that, the Bible explains that death is the wage of sin. Because you earn death according to Bible. It's not just given, we earn our death by committing all these sins and being away from God, who is the source of the life. It's like a broken branch. If you're broken from the main branch and the root, then you eventually wither, dry up, and die. Even if you have fruits, these fruits will not mature and go dead. So that's the kind of understanding about that in Bible. So you have to deal with this sin. And even if it's not death in some other religions, the sin is something that you need to be redempted, meaning to either taken away or be forgiven or appeased, or you need to do something about it. That's the concept or the term redemption. So you need to redeem your sin for something or pay the price for it. And many religions do the sacrifice offerings to please God or gods or spirits, so your sin can be redeemed. This culture of the offering or sacrifice is also in the Judaic tradition, and it's also in the Bible, and it's also in the Christianity. But in Christian understanding of this offering and the sacrifice is symbolic. It is just a symbol of what is going to happen for real. So the giving of this young lamb, the male young lamb, the firstborn, is a symbol of Jesus, the Lamb of God. So Jesus is being sacrificed. So that these sacrifices and the offerings that are happening every day in the temple and the yearly in the temple, that is very symbol of something that is going to come. So that's the Judaic and the Christian interpretation of the redemption. But other religions have the different style and the forms of offerings and redemption. Justification. Justification is the term that God or the gods or spirits saying that you are okay with me. Okay. And you are justified. So being justified means you are righteous. You are righteous. Being righteous means, again, you are without sin. See, so many religions deal with this. Once you are redeemed, if your sin is taken away, then you are justified, meaning you are right. You are without sin. So that's the term justification. So redemption and the justification are more of a legal term. These terms are used in the law of the court. So when you are brought to the court with a certain suspicion, or you have something called charge, and then you are judged by witnesses, and then judge. And when judge pronounce that you are not guilty, that means you are justified. So that's a legal term. But in the Bible and in the religion, it's a religious term. But it means basically the same thing. Your sin or your guilt or your iniquity is removed, and you are without sin. Then sanctification. Sanctification basically is a process of cleaning yourself, dealing with that sin or sins that you are inside. And not only that, but you are growing and maturing toward the holiness, or to the perfection, which is the ideal of any religion. So every religion has this ideal of what human beings supposed to be, or the perfection of a human being. And then you go toward that. It can be a process, it can be a certain steps or levels, whatever the style or form is. The thing is, you become better by doing something, or there are certain ways to be sanctified. But the sanctification, it means you're being more clean, you're being more holy, you're being more mature toward that ideal. In the Bible, it is Jesus Christ, who is also God Himself. So God is perfect, God is sinless, He is righteous, He is without sin, He is holy, He is all knowledgeable, He is almighty, and He has the most goodness, the personality ever. So He is a perfection of a human being, the ideal, most ideal of human being. And we try to imitate Him, to grow and mature to the fullness of Christ, meaning the perfection of Christ. So that's the image and the narrative in the Bible about the sanctification. Then these are some other acts of God. God designates and God also delegates. And if you're a good Christian, or if you're a good Muslim, for the same matter, or if that's the case, then God is going to tell you, God is going to give you certain responsibilities for His own good, or for His people. And designation is God calling you, or a person, or the group of people, to designate them for a certain responsibility. For example, the imam or the pastors, they are designated people, the person of God, the people of God. So people kind of respect in that religion, but I don't think that is necessarily a good thing. But they are just have a special responsibility, unique responsibility compared to others. But not only God designates those are full-time priests or pastors or imam, but He also designates people to do certain responsibility as a doctor, as a nurse, as a teacher. These are also designation as we understand in the Protestant Christianity. So, not only these missionaries and pastors are designated, all the people who have their own specialty, talents are designated in a different way. So that is blessing in our understanding, in Christian understanding. You become who you're supposed to be with the given talents and given interest and your own desire to be successful in certain things, and also that desire to serve others, to benefit others, utilizing what is given to you as God's child. So that's kind of theology or doctrine in Protestant Christianity about designation. And delegation, God uses His people in Christian belief. And in other religions, also God gives certain responsibility. So this designation and delegation goes kind of together. 이거 시간 좀 봐주려고. Okay, I think the time's up for today, and I'll close here. And have a beautiful day. I'll continue the topic on the next class. Bye.